Here we are in the second arc of My Hero Academia, the Quirk Apprehension exam arc. Try saying that 3 times fast. No, seriously. Anyway, now we start getting to the good stuff. Or at least we actually get to UA. The arc starts the night after Deku gets his acceptance letter and then covers his first day of school when Aizawa tests their quirks and promises to expel the lowest ranking in the class. Day 1. No pressure. The Quirk Apprehension arc spans from chapters 5 through 7 in the manga, but is just episodes 5 and 6 in the anime. Episode 5 and chapter 5 begin at the same place, with the teacher's review of the exam results. Then we go to Deku meeting All Might on the beach. Both scenes are very similar. If you're a real stickler, you'll notice that while the teachers chat about Deku, Aizawa says, "Geez, what a racket," in the manga, where he merely grunts in the anime. You could also interpret the grunt to mean he's sizing up Deku rather than just annoyed with his peers. And that's the biggest difference in the first 2 scenes. Let's move on. One interesting moment of clarity for the anime is the scene where Deku heads off for his first day at UA. The anime specifically states that it takes place in April, whereas the manga merely says it's spring. For context, schools in Japan typically start in April, for those of you who didn't know. The anime is just being super specific. And I guess super helpful. Speaking of helpful details, in the anime, as Deku's running to his homeroom, he explains that 36 students are admitted to UA every year, and 4 of those are by recommendation. He doesn't mention the recommendation bit in the manga. We actually find out about the students that got in via recommendation way later. Like, not even in this arc later. To be fair, neither Todoroki or Yaoyorozu, our 2 recommended entries, have a big role in this arc, except that Yaoyorozu places first in the apprehension exam. Because she's a boss. Todoroki gets second, so I guess he's good too. Ish. Side note, I'm always interested in the little social and cultural details of this world, and personally, it was really interesting to learn right off the bat in the anime that there was ostensibly some kind of hero caste system, in which a recommendation from a high-ranked hero can earn you a spot at UA. This is a world that's gotta be full of social inequality based just on who has quirks and who doesn't. So I appreciated this little bit of world building. It definitely helped me form some early opinions about the recommendation students. Moving on, when Deku finally opens the giant door and takes his first step into his homeroom. In the manga, only Ida seems to immediately notice him and take an interest. Well, Bakugo probably does too, but we don't see that. We just see him brooding a few panels later. Because as a good shonen demi-antagonist, that's what Bakugo excels at. Brooding. Shout out to Sasuke. By contrast, in the anime, Ida sees Deku and says, "You," out loud, which causes literally everyone's head to turn. You get the feeling that even before he stepped in the classroom, Deku's unusual exam performance had already earned him a reputation. You don't quite get that vibe in the manga. Details like these really drive home the point that Deku is a dark horse. Any good shonen protagonist has gotta be an underdog, and it's neat to see his classmates immediately recognize his unconventional talents. And ability to get injured and almost die. Arm slapping. Plus, Anime Ida at least proceeds to greet Deku with a good morning before launching into his Somei Academy spiel, so that's nice of him. Meanwhile, All Might is reading the faculty registry, which says, quote, "secret" on it, as if it's a wildly important government document. For all we know it is, right? Nepotism, recommendation-based recruiting, a couple of things seem a little suspicious. Hashtag conspiracy theories. In the manga, he remarks, "Today, the homeroom teachers will conduct the Quirk Apprehension Test." But in the anime, he says the toughness of the first day depends on the homeroom teacher. If we read between the lines, in the manga's world, everyone does the Quirk Apprehension Test on their first day at UA. But in the anime's world, the test is the sole decision of Aizawa, which paints him as the homeroom teacher from hell. Or a Chipotle burrito. I don't know. Not sure. But look, let's not get into what I really think of Aizawa because this video is gonna get flagged. Let's just say he's on my top 10 husbando list. It's all of those, it's just the way come on. Granted, both the anime and manga have Aizawa's line where he explains that UA's freestyle or unrestricted educational system also applies to teachers. So we have a reason to believe that in either case, he's taking some liberties. But it's fair to say that the Quirk Apprehension exam feels way more threatening in the anime. Coming right on the heels of the entrance exam, it definitely gives a feeling that UA is elite and tough. The tension isn't quite so high in the manga. Now we must face our fateful split. Chapter 5 ends with Deku freaking out after Aizawa says the lowest ranking student will be be expelled. That's merely the commercial break in the anime. While we're on the topic of commercials, let's take a second to recognize that in the manga, Aizawa specifically says, if you were hoping to spend your evenings hanging out at McDonald's, then too bad, because UA is gonna put you through the ringer. First of all, who exactly is hanging out at McDonald's every night? And why aren't they inviting me? I'm hungry. Second of all, as you might have predicted from the Nintendo and Marvel references we discussed in the first arc, the anime didn't quite let this McDonald's reference fly, but they stayed way closer than you'd think. The sub translates Aizawa's line as Mickey D's. It sounds to my highly imperfect Japanese ear that Aizawa's saying Makuro, which is one syllable off of Makuto, which is a real Japanese nickname for McDonald's. I heartily refer you to the comments if I stand corrected. Please be gentle. Incidentally, I also spent way more time Googling Japanese McDonald's nickname than I ever thought I would. It's a weird line of dialogue that gets a little condescending depending on the phrasing, and that surreally places UA in the real world. And the dub changes the line entirely. There's no mention of any version of McDonald's at all. You know by now that I'm a sucker for world-building details, and McDonald's makes me wonder how many other overlaps there are with our own reality. Is this some Planet of the Apes shit? It could be, but one McDonald's reference isn't enough to build that theory on. For now. Back to things that have more weight to them. Yuga Aoyama. During the 50-meter dash, Aoyama uses his navel laser, but the ramifications of doing so are, well, in the anime, he fires his beam for too long, he gets a stomach ache in the sub, and his tummy hurts in the dub. But in the manga, he says his stomach would straight up explode. I have so many questions. A lot of differences in phrasing are byproducts of translation, but unless the manga translator really dunked up here, stomach ache and stomach explodes are entirely different. Can Manga Aoyama kill himself while using his quirk? I want to say no, but there are plenty of quirk users with dangerous quirks that could cause them to harm themselves. For example, we know that Mineta is usually immune to his own adhesive, but as he uses his quirk and his stamina drains, he becomes susceptible to his own sticky balls. I just heard myself saying that, and I instantly regret it. The point is, it's fair to assume that other quirk users can injure themselves with their own quirks as time goes on. This time, it's the manga that skews darker than the anime, but we can probably chalk this one up to a difference in translation. The rest of the episode barely diverges from the manga. The biggest departure is when Deku starts to throw the ball the second time. All Might, who's adorably peeking out from behind a building, cheers Deku on the manga by shouting, "Come on now!" But in the anime, All Might's not cheering, he's concerned, as Deku is taking the longest amount of time ever to just throw the damn ball. All Might shouts, hey, are you serious?" Which is a more responsible reaction to the possibility that your power prodigy is about to bust up his bod. In both versions, after Deku finally throws the ball, All Might admits that he was worried and gushes over how cool Deku is. In the anime, we get this right after the throw scene to round out the episode. But in the manga, chapter 6 ends with Aizawa's weird smile, and All Might's adorable geek out is the beginning of chapter 7. It's not much of a cliffhanger, but it is handy because it has some recap built in. And there's a weird little change here too. In the manga, our potentially fatally doomed friend Aoyama thinks the throw was stylishly done. However, the less doomed anime Aoyama says it was not very stylish. Knowing how important panache is to him, the anime and manga versions of Aoyama have totally different opinions of Deku at this point. I'm tempted to agree with anime Aoyama because Deku's throw had some pretty unstylish side effects. Did not think we'd be spending that much time on Aoyama in this installment, but I'm not complaining. He's fine. Let's shift to more predictable focal points. Bakugo and Deku. After Aizawa holds Bakugo back from attacking Deku in a jealous rage, there's a really great moment that's only in the anime. As everyone else heads to the next event, Deku awkwardly tries to walk away from Bakugo. He slowly takes a couple of steps, and when he sees Bakugo isn't about to jump him, turns away and scampers off. I actually kind of love this little 3-second scene. It drives home that Deku is still wary of Bakugo, but that Bakugo is feeling impotent because he can't do as he likes. And we know that those feelings will get way more complicated as the season goes on, with Bakugo lashing out at Deku more than once. The manga makes up for this missing scene with its own exclusive detail. When Bakugo starts monologuing about how Deku was supposed to just be a pebble, we have a meta panel with a couple of moments from their history, including a callback to the very first 2 panels of the series, where young Deku's standing up for another kid. If the extra anime scene focuses on their relationship now, this one emphasizes their past. Even though there are 3 more events, for all we're concerned, action-wise, the tests are over. But now we arrive at a rare, big difference. In the manga, Aizawa announces it's time for the results, and Deku has an inner monologue where he's understandably freaked out about coming in last. Right as Deku's bracing for the worst, Aizawa says, "Also, I was lying about expelling someone." Deku and company flip their biz. Aizawa gives Deku a nurse's pass, and then he shows the results. In the anime, Aizawa announces it's time for the results, and Deku freaks out, just like in the manga. But then, Aizawa shows the rankings. Deku's eyes slowly take them in, he sees he's last, and he really thinks he's expelled. And then Aizawa closes the rankings window and reveals he was lying about expelling someone. The exact same reaction follows in the manga, but did you catch the difference there? The subtle change in the order of events and how that has zero effect on traumatizing Deku? Poor Deku has been through it. Treasure that dramatic switch up, because the next few scenes are super similar. Two random background students spot All Might after his chat with Aizawa in the manga only. That's literally the biggest divergence. So let's jump to when All Might appears in classroom 1A for hero basic training. Weirdly, the manga and the subbed anime both have All Might burst through the door screaming, "I'm coming in through the door like normal," which I love. I'm gonna use that every time I enter a room now. You know, just coming in through the door like normal. But in the dubbed anime, he screams, "I'm coming in through the door like a hero." Obviously, that has literally the opposite connotation and isn't as funny as in the manga and subbed anime. Stranger still is the reason All Might's appearance gives Ojiro goosebumps. In the dub, it's because his costume is so retro, which honestly just makes me think Ojiro's kind of weird. In the sub, goosebumps occur because the costume style is so different. But different from what exactly? The comment makes no sense unless you take into account the dialogue from the manga. The line isn't prescribed to a particular student, but when All Might walks into the room, someone says, "He's drawn so differently from the rest of us. Gives me goosebumps." Ding ding ding! Finally, we have something that's both charmingly meta and that actually makes sense. And then something unusual. In the manga, this chapter, this arc, and volume 1 of the series all end with everyone emerging on the training grounds in their costumes. A heavily silhouetted Deku runs towards the door, and All Might says, "Shall we begin, my wards?" In the anime, this all happens before the commercial break, except we don't see that shot of Deku running until after a bunch of stuff from chapter 8. In fact, episode 6 shares its title with chapter 8. This means that episode 6 technically spans 2 arcs, and that our assessment of the Quirk Apprehension exam arc awkwardly ends here at the end of chapter 7, but in the middle of episode 6. So tune in next time for the stunning conclusion of the 6th episode of My Hero Academia, which is the beginning of the battle trial arc where things get personal. I'm Cristal Marie, and this is GetintheRobot, your anime explainer.